Hey guys, welcome to our tutorial on assembling Crazy Talk animator characters in Adobe Flash. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can assemble your character in Flash, essentially half a character, and then we're going to import that into Crazy Talk animator later to create a semi-multi-angle character. It's not going to be full 360, but I'll show you what I mean in a moment. Now what we have on the screen right now is our default template that's available at our Developer Center in the link below. You can see we have 5 different profiles here from the side. The 315, 270, for example, they can be mirrored to create a 45 and a 90-degree angle respectively. And we also have the top and the bottom. If you want to create those, you're welcome to do that as well. So you can see we have all of these different angle profiles. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on one of my the 0-degree profile character here, and let's take a look. You can see he has all these green and red spots all over his body. He's not suffering from a sickness. He actually has pivot bases and pivot points all over his body. So the red points are the pivot points, and those are very important. You don't want to mess with those. The green parts are the pivot bases, and those are just for your own personal reference. Those do not actually export any data to Crazy Talk Animator when your character is exported. And you can find those in their respective layers right here. This is the pivot 0. If I make that invisible, you can see all the pivot points are gone, and there's the pivot bases all gone. And the 0 right here is actually just this 0 up here, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And then we have our body and face groups. And the face groups, so if we go to the body, if I select the neck, upper torso, lower torso, you can see it's all selecting all of this stuff here. Just a heads up, I'm going to be using a few hotkeys as well. I'm going to be using this V for the selection tool right here, the Q for the free transform tool, as well as the H hand tool, which I use to pan around all the time, just in case you're confused there. So if I select one of my symbols right here, take a look at the properties panel on the right. You can see this one is called Upper Torso 0. And it's very important that all of the names of your symbols remain consistent with this default character you see on the screen. So if I go to the right arm, or rather the left arm there, you can see left arm 0, left arm forearm. Make sure that all the symbol names are correct. Now I'm hoping you have a basic knowledge of Flash, but if you're unaware of what symbols are, I'm going to just double click on this upper torso and explain it a little bit to you. So when I double click on this torso, you can see that I have a symbol which is up here in the upper left. It's part of my scene. And if I select all of these different parts of my symbols, you can see the symbol is simply made up of a line and a base. You can see those right there, and I can modify those if I'd like. If I wanted to, stretch out my base there, I could do that as well. But I won't worry about that for now. Just be aware that all of these different symbols contain, different shapes and lines and all that fun stuff. You can just double-click elsewhere out of here to exit that symbol. And also make sure that all of your symbols are movie clips, not buttons or graphics. And I'll show you how to create a symbol in just a moment. So let's get around to replacing all the body parts on our character. So I'm going to just, you can see that the 0 group contains basically everything there. What I'm going to do is go to my library, and you can see that we have all of the angles available right here. Let's zoom out of my character here for a sec and just take a look. You can see I have all of the different angle sprites for the different angle profiles. There's all the stuff for the 315-degree character, which is actually right over here in the middle. You can see that stuff is in the library. The stuff that you have here is actually in our scene. So if I selected the pivot bases right there, I can select the front hair, anything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to import in some symbols that I've already created from this project over here. You can see that I've replaced all of those different characters' angle profiles with this cute little teddy bear here. So this is what we're going to get to eventually in this tutorial series. In this tutorial, we're only going to be covering the 0-degree angle though. So in this project, I have the same thing. So from the angle folder here, you can see I have the angle folder right here. Just twirl that open. You can see I have actually nothing for the left side, but let's move over to the right side. You can see the right side's different. And that's because what I've done here is I've only created one side. And I've essentially mirrored all the stuff from the right side to the left side. Maybe I'm lazy, but if you just want to learn how to do this, this is what I'm going to show you how to do. So we'll select the right arm. I'm going to select all of the right stuff, including the stuff in the middle, such as the lower and upper torso. So I'm going to select lower torso 0, control select that, and everything on the right side. So right foot 0, right forearm, right hand, right shank, right thigh, and upper torso. And we have our forearm selected, I believe. Right arm, right forearm. Okay, I think we're all good to go. So I'm just going to right click all of those and go ahead and copy them. And I'm going to go back to my tutorial project here and just create a new folder. I'll call this folder bear. And I'm just going to paste everything into that bear folder right there. And we don't want to replace the existing items, so I'll just press OK. And now you can see that the bear folder has that same structure. And we have all of the body sprites right here. Lower torso, right foot, all that fun stuff. And let's go back to the tutorial 2 right here. And I want to copy one more thing, which is the face. And I'm going to be using this face 0 sprite. So I'm just going to, not sprite, rather a symbol. So just go ahead and copy that and go back to our default template and paste that into the bear folder. And that should be good to go. And we should have it in the face folder right there. Alright, so these are symbols I've already created. Generally when you're creating your character, you want to draw these. But since this isn't really a drawing tutorial, I won't really cover that in this tutorial. So let's get around to replacing all the parts on his body. We'll turn him into a half man, half bear kind of beast. So let's start off by deleting the stuff that we don't want in our 0 degree profile. Since our bear is not going to have any hair, he's going to be a hairless bear. Let's just select that front hair. Make sure we're selecting the correct thing here, by the way. Front hair. We're good to go. Press delete. And select the back hair. Go ahead and delete that. I'm just going to zoom in really quickly here. And pan up. And use the selection tool. Select my ears, since my bear has ears built onto his head there. Delete those. And we're actually going to replace the nose as well. I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment as well. The nose, and our bear is not going to have a neck because he's kind of too big and too fat to have a neck. So we'll just go ahead and delete his neck. So that's all the parts that we don't want that are gone. So what I need to do now is start replacing these parts that we do have. And the best way to do that is I'm going to select my face first. So you can see it has face 0 selected. If I go to the properties tab, face 0 is the name of the symbol. And it's an instance of the face 0 symbol that I have in my library. So if I double click that, you can see that my face is actually made up of the base and the line, just like my upper torso was, and face 0 is the symbol. So what I want to do is actually delete all this stuff inside the symbol, delete all that line stuff, go back to my library, and drag in this new face symbol. There we go. So this is a nice looking face. So this guy now has a bear head. But you can see that this symbol, since I dragged in a symbol, it has a blue outline, meaning it's also a symbol. And if I double click on this, you can see now we have a symbol within the symbol. So it's like symbol inception. But it doesn't really matter how many symbols you have within this base symbol. That's totally up to you. You can also name these symbols whatever you want, but you have to make sure that the base symbol is called face 0. So we'll just go back to scene, and you can see we have that kind of a weird looking dude, but I think we'll maybe move him down a little bit. We're going to be replacing the nose momentarily as well. So make sure, if we go to properties, make sure that your base symbol is called face_0. And keep that naming consistent with your layers as well. Let's go ahead and do the upper torso now. So I'm going to just double click on the upper torso. Again, same procedure, select everything, delete it, go back to my library, find my upper torso, there we go, and just click and drag that in. And now we have this nice looking upper torso. And this is also a symbol within a symbol. So if I double click on that, you can see we have upper torso 0. Has a line and a base. We can mess around with that all we want as well, but we won't do that in this tutorial. Let's just go back to the scene and do the same thing for the lower torso. So I'm going to pan down here, select my lower torso, and delete everything. Let's go to lower torso and bring that in. We can position it wherever we'd like. I think that should be about okay. And we can just double click out of here, and I think that looks okay. So let's move on to the arms. I'm going to make the upper and lower torso invisible here, and select the upper arm. Do the same thing for the arms. Select them all, delete, and I believe we'll choose this right arm right here, You can bring that down a little bit further and get out of there. Same thing with the lower arm. Delete. Select my right forearm and drag that in. Now it's important to ensure that all of your character's limbs are exactly straight, and we're going to talk more about that later. But let's go over to the hand now. Now the hand is a little bit different. If I double click on the hand, you can see there's a number of different frames in the timeline. And if I scrub through here, you can see that they all have different symbols. Those symbols correspond to the different poses in Crazy Talk Animator 2. So the only thing we're going to worry about in this tutorial is just the normal one, which is at frame 1. Now how do I know that's normal? If I click on it and I go to my properties, it'll say hand relax, which is the normal position. And if I go back out of it, if I select it, you can see right hand 0. So again, this one right here is relaxed. Now with the hands and the eyes and the nose and the mouth, you want to make sure that they have 2 symbol layers. Because each little keyframe rather on this timeline is a different symbol, and as you can recall, each symbol is consists of their own shapes and lines and everything like that. So just make sure with the hands and multi-pose elements like the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows and hands, that they all have 2 symbols. The symbol naming needs to be consistent as well. So in this one, we're only going to replace the first pose here. So again, let's just select this relax one, go ahead and delete it, and let's go to the library and bring in our right hand. There we go. We can just bring that into a general position that we think it should be at right now. And I think that'll be just fine right there. Let's get out of here, go back to our scene, and you can see it's behind the forearm, which is okay. We can just click and drag it on the layers up to above the forearm, and problem solved. Let's do the same thing with the legs now. I'm going to go ahead and delete the thigh. I'll choose the right thigh right here, click and drag that symbol in, and I think the positioning should be okay about right there. And let's do the same thing with the lower leg. Select all that. Oh, we have the locked, layer locked, so make sure you have that unlocked so you can actually make changes to it. Delete that base and select the right shank, bring her over. You can see the bear has much shorter legs than his counterpart. So we'll just go ahead and get out of there and then move on to the feet. The feet, the final one, we will just delete that, take our right foot and bring it over here. And that right foot should be just fine right there. And double click out of there. So now we have all of our symbols named properly. And you want to double check that by going to properties, and right foot 0, right shank 0, right thigh, right hand, right forearm. Make sure that all of this, the naming is consistent with the default character. So now we can reveal our upper and lower torso again. Let's bring those back in here and go up here. And what I want to do now is make sure that the positioning is relatively correct. So let's go ahead and select the right arm, right forearm. I'm going to hold Shift and select all of these. And then I can use my arrow keys to kind of put them into position here. I'll hold Shift down, actually, and move them a little bit faster. I think that'll be about fine right there. And do the same thing with the right leg. I think it'll look okay right about there. And now currently we have a bear that is kind of a mutant bear that has a really high mouth. He's half human and half bear, but we're going to fix that momentarily. The first thing we have to do though is make sure that our pivot points are correct. So again, I'm going to make, let's twirl down these folders here just so they're not taking up so much space. I'm going to make my pivots and my pivot bases visible now. As you can see, they are way out of whack with the current model. So what I want to do is bring those back into position. So I'm going to use my V hotkey to toggle my selection, and I'm going to bring all of my pivot bases back into position. Let's actually start with the upper and lower torso here. And to do that, I'm going to open the body folder again here. I'm going to make my upper torso invisible. Now this pivot base is going to be indicating where the upper torso is going to rotate around. So I'm going to move this up to about here, and I'm going to use the Q hotkey to change to my free transform. And if I hold down the Shift key and I click and drag, I can stretch that out uniformly. And this is going to be position it about right there. Maybe we can stretch it out a little bit more this way as well. Bring that down a tiny bit. You just want to make sure that it's centered, and that's going to act as the pivot base for my upper torso. And you can see that there's a tiny little white dot in there, and that indicates the pivot base. Okay, so let's go ahead and select our upper torso. I'll make that visible again, and you can see that the center of the upper torso, it looks fairly good actually where the upper torso pivot point is. But again, let's select that pivot base and zoom in a tiny little bit. You want to make sure that the upper torso here is centered exactly where that center of that pivot base is. You can see it's right there, and we can put that right there, and that should be just fine. The lower torso, oops, we don't want to rotate that. The lower torso, on the other hand, select that lower torso. Where are you? Bring the upper torso up a little bit so we can select that lower torso. Bring it down, select the base. Make sure your upper torso is right centered on that point. That should be good. And the lower torso, like I was mentioning, if I select the lower torso itself, we want to make sure that the lower torso point is kind of focused around the exact center of that lower torso. So again, I'm going to select my lower torso, use the Q hotkey, and let's go ahead and try and place this lower torso point right in the middle. I think it should be about there, below the lower torso. You can use these side little indicators here. If I bring down some guidelines, right there, that'll be the center. So right there, that's the exact center of the lower torso. Right there, I believe. Or maybe a little bit to the left. And the upper torso will need to be adjusted there as well then. Yeah, a little bit to the left as well. And there we go. So the way to test that out is let's select the upper torso now. And you can see that that little white point right there, that's where the upper torso is going to rotate around. So for example, if I move that little white point to somewhere over here, and I rotate this upper torso, look at where it rotates around. It rotates around that little white point, which is not what we want. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z and undo that, and move this exactly to where the upper torso pivot point is. And this way we can test it out, what the result is going to be in CrazyTalk Animator. Because CrazyTalk Animator is going to use these little red pivot points to indicate where your parts are going to rotate along. So let's test that out. And you can see there we get a fairly smooth result. I think it's kind of rotates around nicely. And so we can just press Ctrl Z and undo that. And if I select lower torso again, you can see that currently the rotation point is down here, which isn't going to work for us. You know, you can just go ahead and move that up to the lower torso point right there and test it out. I think that's fine for the rotation of the lower torso. Press Ctrl Z, undo that. And so now that the pivot points for our upper and lower torso are set, we can go ahead and make those invisible so we can have access to the stuff behind it. Let's start out with our right hand. So the right forearm is going to be down here. The right arm is way up there. So let's go ahead and select that pivot base. Let's bring all this stuff down to the relatively correct area, at least the first two. As pivot base, I'm going to, again, stretch that out. Hold down the Shift key to stretch it uniformly, and bring it up to about there. And that should be good. Just make sure it's centered. Oops, we don't want to move that guide right there. Let's just move this. I think that should be okay right there. And then I'll move this right pivot point down, right into the center of that base. And that should be just fine. Same thing for the right forearm, except for the right forearm. Let's go ahead and, where's our right arm? Right here. Let's go ahead and make that, well, we want the right arm to be visible. The right forearm can be invisible. And so you can see that we want basically the rotation points, we kind of want to be around well-rounded areas like right here. So for example, if I hold Shift and I stretch this out, this is going to be the pivot base for my right forearm. This is where the right forearm is going to pivot around. Let's bring that up a little bit. Take this pivot point and bring that up right there. We can use the guides to measure it out correctly later. And let's go ahead and bring those right hand ones down as well. I think the right hand can just stretch that out. Let's make that form invisible. Maybe we'll like the hand invisible. And there you go. You can see that we want it to kind of stretch out, or rather rotate around that area. And so we'll bring that right hand pivot point right down to the center, right there. And then the right hand nudge just basically stands for the very end of the hand. And so let's bring that right hand nudge way over here, kind of guesstimate where it's aligned, and there you go. And I can bring in another guide right here, or I can just use this one, bring it over here to make sure that all of our stuff is aligned. Let's bring the right arm, the guide right about there. That should be good. This right forearm, you need to move it a little bit, smidgen to the right, and this right hand, smidgen to the left, and that right hand nudge, we'll just nudge that over to the right. Now it's important to make sure that all of your pivot points are aligned, otherwise you will have some kind of strange rotation issues in Crazy Talk Animator. So those guides are fairly useful for that. And let's just go ahead and do the legs now. So with a thigh, we'll do a similar procedure. Bring that thigh down here. Bring the right thigh, point to right about there. And then with our shank, we'll do the same thing. Hold shift and stretch that out. And bring it about right there, I think. Let's see with our right foot. Right thigh will make the right thigh invisible. It needs to be a little bit higher. There we go. And the right shank will be right at that point. And then the right foot. And let's bring that thigh down. Right shank, where are you? There we go. And normally this rotation can be about halfway through the foot. Oh, that should be about fine. Let's bring this up here and stretch it out. So that could be about fine. Let's take a look at make that shank visible, make the foot invisible. You can see it's just about right, maybe a little bit higher. And I'll bring that foot rotation pivot point a little bit higher up. And let's make that foot visible one more time, and bring the foot nudge over there. That's cool. We can just bring in another guide from the side to make sure everything is aligned properly. Here we go. I think that should be about okay. We'll bring those pivot points over a slight bit and nudge that right nut over. Alright, so now we have pretty much everything aligned. All of our pivot points are aligned. We can even just go ahead and bring this mouth down since it looks a little bit weird way up there. We're not going to be replacing the mouth, but just make sure that the pivot point is, on the mouth right there. And we're good to go. So let's control minus out of here, and let's make our upper and lower torso visible again. So we still have our mutant bear, but at least half of his body is aligned, and everything looks pretty good. Now for the last part of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your own symbol by just importing in a SWF file. So let's go to our library here, and I'm going to close down the bear folder. What I want to do is actually just go ahead and go over to File, and I want to import something to my library. And I'm going to import this nose. This is a nose that I've previously created, so I'll go ahead and press Open. And take a look at the Swift file right here. It's just a cute little bear nose. I can click and drag this onto the stage. But if I go to Properties, you can notice it's not a symbol, it's actually a graphic. In addition to that, I've accidentally imported in this nose onto the incorrect layer, so let's just go ahead and delete that. I want to make sure that I am in the face folder in my nose 0 layer, and then I want to go into my library and bring that Swift file in. But we still need to turn this into a symbol, and the way you can do that is actually just by right-clicking the graphic right there and selecting Convert to Symbol. Like I mentioned before, the naming of these is very important, so you want to keep it consistent with the layer name. So we don't want to call it symbol 1, we want to call it nose underscore 0. And again, make sure it's a movie clip, so not a button or a graphic, make sure it's a movie clip, and press OK. So now we have a symbol. You can see Properties, this is nose 0, and we can call the instance name nose underscore 0 as well. And just press Enter. Now let's bring this into position. And maybe about there will be just fine, I believe. Now, as you may recall, I mentioned with the hands, things like noses, hands, and eyes, they have many different poses. So what this nose needs is actually a symbol within a symbol. We're not going to create the other poses right now. I'm just going to double click the nose. we'll do the same procedure. Right click on here and select Convert to Symbol. And we're going to call this one Normal. Okay, and it's a movie clip again. Press OK. And now this symbol is called Normal. Let's make sure we name it up here as well. And if I double click on this, there you can see I can go into the next layer. Now normally this layer right here, this nose 0 layer, this is a layer that would have all the different symbols on it. And Normal just happens to be one of those symbols. So if I double click on it, Normal is the symbol that I have at frame 1. So we won't worry too much about that in this tutorial. We'll get more into that in our eye creation tutorial. So I'm just going to go back to scene 1 right here. And we have a decent looking bear, but let's help this guy get himself fixed up and ready to import into CrazyTalk Animator. So in part 2 of this tutorial, that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to export this guy to a Swift file and import him into CrazyTalk Animator. So stay tuned for that.